Copy.
One of us should turn off the audio.
This is the day we have been given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. I'm Damian Sullivan, and I am presently the secretary of the parish committee. I'd like to welcome everyone, especially any newcomers today to service. Newcomers, please feel free to fill out the new members form, which can be found in a link in the chat of this Zoom. Please stay on for conversation after the service. We will be sharing joys and sorrows during that time and having conversation about where we are finding hope during this period. We would especially like to thank Michael Feeney and Carrie Borkowski for being our tech and Zoom people today. We are looking for more people to join them. Please consider volunteering for this vital role. All training is provided free of charge. I cannot stress enough, we really do need more volunteers to help with this if we want to continue having these services online every week. As you can see, we've posted right now is what's happening this week. Please note the parish committee meeting is this week. Pardon me. There's a newcomers gathering on the 17th coming up. We are going to be having a Christmas Eve service. We do need help. Please consider volunteering for this. And we would especially like to thank everyone who participated and helped with the Christmas fair it was held this past weekend. It was a huge success and a lot of people did a tremendous and wonderful amount of work. And we would all like to thank all of you for what you did for us. Thank you. At the heart of our life together is a promise of how we will be together. Our covenant expresses this promise, and we say it every week to recommit ourselves to live together in love. Let us say it together right now. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to cherish the living earth, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. Each week, we light a candle, which we call a chalice, for the container which holds it. The chalice and its light remind us of many things: the light of truth, the circle of love, which holds each of us, the light which shines within each of us. Today, we light our chalice for the light of love. Love in our hearts, love in our homes and communities and in the world. May we carry this light in our heart and into the world.
The chalice is lit at First Parish. I invite you, wherever you are, if you have a candle near you, to light it and to hold it up to show our common light. This Advent, we are looking to hear words of comfort, of challenge, and of good news. We are looking for words, images, stories, and music which meet us in our fears and open our hearts to the opposite of fear, which is love. This season is filled with stories of angels who proclaim the good news of the power of love to overcome fear. An angel is a messenger, and while some angels fly in on their wings, others meet us walking on the way, while still others, like the anonymous poet of the Holocaust, leave their words and their stories to speak to our present from their past.
I believe in love. I believe in love. Even when I don't feel it. I believe in love. I believe in love. Even when I don't feel it.
We give thanks for the glimpses we catch of daring love, even in the midst of fear, of challenge, of struggle, even when we cannot yet see a better day, when we will act like the human family we are. May we be aware of the flame of love within us, that we might glow with its brilliance from the inside out. Our candle glows red today. Red is the color of blood, which comes from the heart, and so represents courage and love, qualities we need to move away from our fears. You are invited to light your candle of love at this time, and let us sing our opening carol, People Look East. During Advent, this series in December, during the children's time, we're talking about Christmas movies and specials. And today, you can tell perhaps, Our focus is on the old cartoon, The Grinch. You may wonder, Beth wondered why I had this stuffed animal, and no, I did not buy it for today. The Grinch happens to be one of my favorites, and a couple of years ago, Chuck and the boys gave me The Grinch as a Christmas present. I'm not going to play it, but he does play the theme song if you press the button. Michael's very excited. Yeah, I'm not going to play it right now. It takes a long time. We can play it at the end. Stay on for joys and sorrows, and I'll play it then. How about that? So I don't know if any of you watched The Grinch recently or if you remember it from past years, but I was thinking a little more deeply about the Grinch and why he is so upset with the Who's and what changes for him. If you were here, I would ask you your thoughts, but I invite you to share them in the chat, and I will read them later. That would be lovely to hear your thoughts. I got thinking, we don't know anything about what happened to the Grinch before the story starts. And I was trying to imagine what had hurt him so much that seeing the Who's happiness makes him angry. Did he feel somehow that he was never allowed to be happy? Did the Grinches that he lived with as a child make him feel that happiness was not for him? Did he not feel that he was loved? We don't know. But whatever we do know, that whatever has happened to him in the past, it has made his heart 2 sizes too small. His heart is so tight that he can't take love in and he can't let love out. And so he decides, you may remember, to go and steal the Who's Christmas because he thinks that stealing their presents and their trees will make them unhappy too. And he gets them out of town and he takes them up on that pinnacle. And then he listens to hear them cry out in sadness. And instead, of course, he hears them sing out their joy in one another. And somehow that joy expands his heart. Somehow their love helps him to understand that love is not denied to him, that love is his as well as theirs. And I think in part, he brings their gifts back, not because he thinks they need them, he knows they don't, but because that's his entry into their circle of love. And he knows that they will forgive him and receive him as they do, and that their love helps his love to grow. And so I think the message of the Grinch is about that kind of love, not the love of the Who's for one another, or the love of the Grinch for himself or for them, but the knowledge that each of us is held in that deep, abiding love that's always there. And we help one another see and feel that love, but even when we are alone, on a mountaintop, thinking we are isolated, that love is there for us. So I'd love to see your thoughts on love and how you see love working its way in the world, melting and expanding hearts.
As we said last week, our worship series this Advent calls on the power of music to move humanity towards a brighter tomorrow. Rather than turn away from music in sorrow, we will turn toward music and deepen our appreciation of its role in healing, change, and reconciliation. Today's anthem, O Music by Lowell Mason, reminds us of how much First Parish Situate appreciates music and its musicians. Singing and playing instruments together, whether in our church sanctuary or on our front porches, warms our hearts and draws us together in a loving community. I really enjoyed putting together the slideshow of members of our congregation making music together. We have a lot of talented musicians among us, and I look forward to the time when we can safely sing and play together in our beautiful church sanctuary with the best acoustics in town.
to see all your faces in that. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, choir. And I remind you, as I wrote in my column, Beth and I now can see you here in the sanctuary in the screen setup on gallery view. And so if you don't have your camera on, but would be willing to turn it on, I encourage you to do so because it makes us feel that we are not just speaking and playing to Michael and Carrie and an empty sanctuary. Following that piece on music, I have a poem for you called Music by the poet Anne Porter. When I was a child, I once sat sobbing on the floor beside my mother's piano as she played and sang, for there was in her singing a shy yet solemn glory my smallness could not hold. And when I was asked why I was crying, I had no words for it. I only shook my head and went on crying. Why is it that music, at its most beautiful, opens a wound in us, an ache, a desolation deep as a homesickness for some far off and half forgotten country? I've never understood why this is so. But there's an ancient legend from the other side of the world that gives away the secret of this mysterious sorrow. For centuries on centuries, we have been wandering, but we were made for paradise as deer for the forest. And when music comes to us with its heavenly beauty, it brings us desolation. For when we hear it, we half remember that lost native country. We dimly remember the fields, their fragrant windswept clover, the bird songs in the orchards, the wild white violets in the moss by the transparent streams. And shining at the heart of it is the longed for beauty of the one who waits for us, who will always wait for us in those radiant meadows. Here ends our reading. I invite you to get into a comfortable position of rest. I invite you now to get as quiet and as still as you can. I invite you to a deep breath and a deep listening posture, perhaps eyes closed or fixed on a candle, as we prepare for our time of prayer and meditation.
The gentle pull of God is often lost amidst the rush of all the obligations which lay a claim on us. Yet just beyond the frantic pace, our restless feet have trod, like deep still pools of quietness, the dwelling place of God. Meet me in the stillness here, be the air I breathe. Meet me in the stillness here. Free me to receive, to receive.
Let us open our hearts to mystery. We are not met together in this sanctuary, but we do meet one another in the stillness of our hearts. The words of our hearts are different, but the longings are the same. Longings for peace, for hope, for love, for joy, not just for our individual selves and for those we love. We long for peace, hope, joy, and love to embrace our world, to fill each human heart, to fill the very air, the trees, the flowers, the rocks. We long for every living thing to be at its fullness of life and of being. In the stillness of our heart, we often grieve for the ways these things are not yet realized. We long for that radiant land. And yet, in the stillness of our hearts, we are also met with words of reassurance and comfort, reminders that though they are not here fully, peace, hope, love, and joy surround us. Their signs are everywhere. When we breathe and reopen our hearts to receive them. As we do so now in our own peace, hope, love, and joy, we hold the needs of the world, offering them those qualities as well. Today, especially, we remember all who have died of COVID, all who mourn them, and all who are ill with that disease and with others. We pray for all who suffer in body, mind, or spirit. We pray for all refugees and for families separated by our government, for parents and children lost to each other. We pray for our earth. We pray for our leaders that they may have wisdom and compassion to care for everyone equally. And we pray today for the congregation of Middle Collegiate Church in New York City and for their minister, Jackie, for the church building burned yesterday. We mourn with them the loss of their home and pray for their continuing ministry of revolutionary love. And we pray that revolutionary love might become so much the way of our world that we no longer see it as revolutionary, but just the way things are. I invite you now in the stillness of your hearts to receive that love.
Meet me in the
Throughout the ages, people have gathered during the long nights of winter to tell stories of death and rebirth. They may be stories of bravery called out from unexpected people, of a quest fulfilled after long hardship, or of ghosts returning from the dead to offer a message of new life. So though we are gathered in daylight this morning, I have a seasonal ghost story for you. 25 years ago, I served as the interim minister of the First Church Unitarian in Lancaster, Massachusetts. One of my predecessors there had been Edmund Hamilton Sears, whom we now mainly remember as the author of the Christmas hymn, "It Came Upon the Midnight Clear." So on Christmas Eve, it was the church's tradition to hold a late night service ending at midnight with the singing of Sears's hymn as the steeple bell rang out the good news of Christmas morning. One year, long before I was there, on a Christmas Eve in one of the long years of the Vietnam War, a guest organist was playing for the service. He knew nothing about the church's connection with Sears, just that he was to play that hymn at the end of the service. And he played it magnificently. The music held the words with power and passion, carrying the congregation to sing the words with deeper feeling than ever before. After the service, the man who told me this story complimented the organist on his playing and told him how it had made him feel. "You know," the organist replied, "it felt like someone else was there moving my hands. I didn't feel like I was the one playing that hymn. I felt like someone else was playing it through me." Sears, they concluded, was there with them that Christmas Eve. So why might Sears's ghost have returned to play his hymn? Let me tell you a little about how that hymn came to be written. Today, we only remember Sears as the writer of that hymn, but in his own day, he was recognized as a prominent theologian, poet, and lyricist. He began his ministry in 1838 at the First Parish of Wayland, Massachusetts. He was drawn, he wrote, by the quiet beauty of Wayland with its sylvan life and little parish. But Sears and his wife Ellen had a growing family. The church in Wayland couldn't pay enough to support them. So when the pulpit committee of the much larger and wealthier church in Lancaster reached out to this rising star of a minister to ask if he would come to serve them, he sadly resigned from his ministry in Wayland and moved his family to Lancaster in 1840. The Lancaster Church, with its big brick sanctuary designed by Charles Bulfinch, served a growing area of farms and mill towns. Sears found that he was kept so busy serving this large parish that he had little time to distill his thoughts and emotions into essays or poetry. And he had a lot of emotion he needed to process. In addition to all of the individual sorrow and suffering he was privy to through his pastoral care, he was a strong abolitionist and a pacifist. The US's invasion of Mexico to annex Texas and the thousands wrongly, he felt, left dead, weighed upon him, as did his increasing feelings of hopelessness of freeing the slaves without a war. He became so depressed that he could not function, and in 1847, he resigned from the church in Lancaster. I don't know anything about his time sitting with his grief and his fears. The biographical materials only tell us that in 1848, he was well enough to begin preaching again in Wayland, where his family had moved, and that in 1849, he wrote, "It Came Upon the Midnight Clear." But the power of that hymn shows us that he was opened by his time of suffering to a greater depth of love than before. Unlike an earlier Christmas hymn he had written, which also has angels singing over the plains, this one mourns that man at war with man hears not the love song which they bring. Like Longfellow hearing the bells on Christmas Day, Sears knows that there are no easy answers, that a love song is not a sweet message, but a call to action and embodiment. In a verse which isn't usually sung anymore, he reaches out to all who, like him, know pain in body, mind, or spirit. And ye beneath life's crushing load, whose forms are bending low, who toil along the climbing way with painful steps and slow, look now, for glad and golden hours come swiftly on the wing. Oh, rest beside the weary road and hear the angels sing. He invites us, for who among us hasn't struggled under a crushing load? He invites us to rest, to reflect, to engage with our feelings rather than struggle against them, and so to come through to that dark, open plain of the Spirit, where we can see that the sky around us is filled with angels, with good news that we are not alone, that our struggle is not for nothing, even if we do not achieve our dreams. So many of the wise ones we look to in our journeys have walked this way before us. Today, many Buddhists celebrate Bodhi Day, when tradition holds that the Buddha achieved enlightenment. Though we often picture the Buddha sitting alone under the bo tree, his journey began with his engaging with the sorrows of the world, not looking away or trying to protect himself. This is the message of all religious paths, that life is suffering, as the Buddha realized, and it's how we engage with that suffering which makes the difference. Do we try to close ourselves off from it, as Sears found himself doing during those first years in Lancaster? Or do we let ourselves be broken open by it, and so find our broken places filled with love? So why might Sears's ghost have returned to play his hymn during the Vietnam War? For the same reason he might return again this year. We have been broken open by so much suffering in our nation and in the world in recent years. The charge which comes to us this Christmas and every Christmas is to hold on to what we have learned about the world and ourselves, that it may flow out in love, as the music played from that organist on Christmas Eve, turning Sears's sorrow into hope and love, signs, as Anne Porter wrote, of the longed-for beauty of that radiant meadow where all shall find a home. Let us now take for ourselves the angel's message as we join Beth in singing Sears's hymn.
Of the glorious soul
We don't just sing of love, we live love and we act in love. This season, you are invited to offer love to people around the world by supporting the work of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. You'll find the link on the screen during Beth's music for reconnecting. We wait for justice, but we do not wait to work for change. We wait for restored health, but we do not wait to work to heal. We wait for wholeness, but we do not wait to work at binding brokenness. We wait for peace, but we do not wait to work to eliminate hatred. And so, like bells ringing out the news, fear not. Continue to fill the night left by sadness with messages of love. Go into your lives humming the tunes that keep that love alive in you and that spur you on in your work of justice and reconciliation. And now, even if there's no one there to hear you, or even if there is someone there to hear you, raise your voice and repeat after me, do not be afraid. Go in peace and in joy.
Thank you.